Good morning, everybody. I'm so thankful to be back with you again on this beautiful Tuesday morning. So today I just want to go ahead and just dive on in with our devotion. So today we're going to do things a little different, and I'm actually going to talk to you all today about the life of somebody in the Bible that we talk about a lot. At least I know I do, and that is Joseph. I feel like sometimes in life, and especially I feel like around this time of the year, I feel like at this time you all have been in school. You're like kind of in that mid section of school, so you've been in school now for a little while. I know that things get hard. I feel like we're getting ready to come to the season of we come through all these worldly holidays that we're getting ready to come into. And I think that sometimes in these times, we are just bombarded with some tough decisions that we have to make. We are bombarded with pressure from people around us. And I think that this is why this message I feel is just important for you all. Back in July, a lot of you all, early August, a lot of you all made that decision, to give your hearts back to God. And I know that after making that decision, it's not always easy after that. When we first give our lives to God, things might be easy there in that moment, because we feel those burdens lifting, we feel lighter, we feel God coming into our hearts and He starts to change us, and things are easy and it's exciting and it feels good. And it always will feel good if you continue to put on your helmet of salvation. But at the same time, there are going to start to be attacks that do come to us. And I think sometimes if we're not careful and if we don't truly have our armor of God put on, those attacks can really start to get to us. And we start having some questions. And especially I feel like now we're kind of like in this midsection, some time has passed from those moments. And just from even talking with a lot of you all, I know a lot of you all have been struggling with a lot of different things, a lot of different peer pressures from friends, a lot of different times where you don't know, have I backslid already? Am I really living for God? What am I doing? And some of you all may even question, is this really right for me? Or can it wait? Or, we all have these struggles and in these times, because living for God, it's not always easy, but I promise it's so worth it. As I told you all last Wednesday, the one thing in my life, if I have one regret ever in my life, it is not giving my heart fully over to God sooner. And I want to show you in the Word how when you truly do sell yourself out to God, even from that young age, all the things that God can truly start to do. See, the longer that you really serve God, the more He is able to do in your life. You see, whenever we're not really serving God, whenever we're not fully committing ourselves to Him, then we're not allowing the doors of heaven to really be opened up on our behalf. We really are binding God's hand still to where God really can't do things for us. But when we really start living for Him, when we're really pushing through all of these hard times, and we've been talking a lot in the book of James, about trials, about temptations, about all these things, and how we have to learn how to just push through it and how we need to push through it. And I just want to keep elaborating on that. But I just really felt led today to get back into the life of Joseph, and I just want to show you all something. So in the book of Joseph, in Joseph's life, in the book of Genesis, we will be starting in chapter 37, and I'm just going to kind of like pick out a couple places to go. But in 37 and verse 2, we actually find out that Joseph's journey starts when he's 17 years old. And it says here, these are the generations of Jacob, Joseph being 17 years old. So we know here when Joseph's life is really getting ready, when we're really going to start digging into all the goods and the bads and the ups and the downs, they start when he's 17 years old. Now, for many of you all may be around this age. A lot of you all are teenagers or getting into your teens. Joseph is only a teenager himself. Joseph lives until he's 110 years old. Their lifespan was a little bit longer than what even ours are. But even at that, he's just a teenager here. He is just starting off in his life. And that is, I feel, where a lot of you all are at. You all are in this teenage, young time in your life. And I just want to show you all the things that God has done because Joseph started at such a young age. So here in Joseph's life, we see that at the age of 17, Joseph was already being the favorite of the family, right? So God did have an anointing on Joseph's life. And his brothers were very jealous of Joseph. And so his brothers began to conspire this thing of, hey, we've got to get rid of him. We can't handle him. Their jealousy took over them, and it got the best of them. And it got to the point where they had no love left for their brother. They were willing to kill their brother, their own flesh and blood. They were ready to make that decision because of jealousies and envies, strife, and all these things that harbor into them. And so Joseph starts having these dreams that are given to him by God. The brothers, they didn't like these dreams, and it made them even more mad. So one day Joseph catches them out, kind of doing something they weren't supposed to do in the field, and that was it for them. So they capture their brother and they throw him into a pit. They were going to kill him, but their oldest brother Reuben said, no, let's not kill him. So instead, Judah, the other brother, had came up with a plan of, let's sell him to slavery because here's some people we can at least get some money from it, right? And not have his blood on our hands. So they decided to sell their brother into slavery. So think of Joseph. Joseph is one of the favorites in the family. God's giving him all these things, but now he's at a place where he's thrown into a pit by his own siblings, the ones that he loved, right? He loved his siblings. And yet the people that Joseph loved throw him into this pit, were trying to decide if they were going to kill him. They ended up selling him to slavery. But God still yet had favor upon Joseph. And so even in this time, I want you now to look in verse 39, or chapter 39, and verse 2. So here Joseph, when he gets sold to slavery, he gets sold to a man named Potiphar. And Potiphar was an officer in Pharaoh's army, and he was what they call the captain of the guard, right? So Potiphar was a very authoritative figure, you could say, in Egypt at that time. And it says this in chapter 39, verse 2. It says, and the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And so here we see, even though Joseph was sold into slavery, God still yet was with Joseph. And he allowed Joseph to go to this man, and who was a very authoritative figure in Egypt, a very prosperous man. And he allowed Joseph to be prosperous even as a slave in that house. So see here, this time in Joseph's life, it's not going to be easy. He's a slave. He's no longer a son, right, in his father's house, getting that coat of many colors and getting to all this stuff. He's not getting that. He's now a slave for somebody. But even through this moment, God was still with him. And you got to think, Joseph is still a young man growing up in this time. His life just started when he was a teen. I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. All of this started for Joseph when he's just a teenager. So he gets sold into slavery, but God was still with him. And so here then, he gets ranked up, and he's doing well with Potiphar. But Potiphar's wife threw up some accusations that were false. She lied about things about Joseph, and Potiphar ended up having to throw Joseph into prison. So now Joseph went not just from being a son, then he gets to being a slave. Now he's a prisoner. So God's with Joseph through this. And there are still times of being prosperous in Joseph's life. But the seasons of Joseph's life does not look easy. Right? It was easy when he was at home with his parents and being loved on and being cherished. But then he gets sold into slavery where he's a slave, and now he gets thrown into prison and he is a prisoner. But let's look at this. We're still in chapter 39, but verse 21, it says this: "But the Lord was with Joseph." You see, though Joseph's life is getting harder, he never lost his salvation. He never gave up on God. And because he never gave up on God, God never gave up on Joseph. God was still with Joseph because Joseph took God with him. God just can't go with us if we don't want him to. We have the choice to choose. That's why Joshua says, choose you this day who you will serve. You have to make the decision every day. God, am I going to serve you today or am I not? And if you're not, then God can't be with you. And if God's not with you, you really can't be prosperous because Satan is just continually just bogging you down and bogging you down. And there's no hope to come back up from that. But when you have the Lord in your life, he gives us that hope that yes, though we might be in a place of imprisonment even, we might be at the lowest of lows in our life, but God can still be with us. And so let's continue to keep looking. Yes, Joseph is now in prison, but let's keep looking. But the Lord was with Joseph. And if you go on down just two more verses into verse 23, it says, the keeper of the prison. So the keeper of the prison, he realized something really quick, even in the verse ahead of us. He realized that the Lord was with Joseph. And so he actually put Joseph over the prisoners, right? So he even still yet, there was still favor because God was with Joseph. Joseph was still prospering even in prison because whenever he was first thrown in, it says here, let's just look at it, verse 20. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound. They were bound. They were in that place where they were fully bound being in prison, right? It wasn't just, okay, I'm going to put cuffs on you until you're in prison and then I'll take them off. No, it says they were bound even in prison. But it says, but the Lord was with Joseph, and he showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So now, because Joseph continued to take God with him, now he's been shown mercy and he's been shown favor. And so now even the keeper of the prison, everybody that's always around Joseph, can see that the Lord is in this man. Even though he's in the lowest of lows, they can still see that God's still with him. And so it says the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hands all the prisoners that were in prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. So Joseph now gets the opportunity to help be over top of kind of these prisoners while he's a prisoner himself, okay? And then in verse 23, it says, the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him. The Lord was with Joseph. And that which he did, that means that what Joseph was doing, the Lord made it to prosper. You see, when you can take God with you, even from a young age of being a teenager, if you'll continue to take God with you, then God will still yet allow you to prosper in life. Though there might be times when things get hard, decisions have to be made. You might not always have all your friends, all your loved ones cheering you on like how Joseph did. Joseph wasn't always just kept in his loving little family home where everybody loved him and those things. No, not even in his own home. Joseph's brothers still yet were so jealous of him. But you see, Even in our lives, we're not always going to be accepted and loved by everybody around us. There's going to be people that may see us differently, and we might get attacked by the enemy because of those. But if you will stand for God, and if you will take God with you, then God will allow you to prosper in your life. Now I want to show you this. Later on, Joseph has these dreams again. He's starting to be able to interpret these dreams actually for other people while he's in prison. And then later on, one of those prisoners got released and was able to go back to Pharaoh's courts. And then Pharaoh started having these bad dreams. And that guy was like, hey, I was in prison one time with a guy and he interpreted my dream and it was spot on. And this other guy's dream, it was spot on. So maybe this guy can help you. So then Joseph comes up to Pharaoh and he's in front of Pharaoh. But he doesn't come back in front of Pharaoh until Joseph's 30 years old. So from the time that Joseph was 17 to the time that he was 30, he was going through pits, being servant, being a slave, being a prisoner. He was going through all these hard times for these 13 crucial years. But because Joseph was 17 and he still had God with him at such a young age, now let's look and see what's going to happen to him here in his 30s. And so here, whenever he interprets Pharaoh's dream, Pharaoh feels the Spirit of God all over Joseph. Pharaoh doesn't even worship God. But Pharaoh sees God working through Joseph and he realizes, hey, that is the true God. And so he makes Joseph the second in command. He actually took off his ring, his rule, his government, and put it upon Joseph's hand. And he said, Joseph, the only time I'll ever be over top of you is when we're just here in this palace. But other than that, Joseph, you have rule over all the land of Egypt. And so here, then we all know the story that, Joseph's brothers, they come to Egypt and, Joseph does some things and he realizes his brothers have changed and his dad comes back into his life and they have this great reunion and they all live together and they're all happy. One day their father dies. And then the brothers start to think, oh, well, now Joseph probably won't want us because you remember what we did to him back all those years ago when he was about 17 years old, how we treated him all those years. Joseph's not going to want to be good to us. But in chapter 50 of Genesis, in verse 19, actually I'll go back just a little bit. I'll go in 18. His brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, behold, we will be thy servants. Because see here, that's where their dad had just died. And so now the brothers are thinking, Joseph's going to be so mad. He's going to hate us now. He was only good to us while dad was alive. And so now they're begging. They fell down on their face and they're like, behold, Joseph, we'll be your servants. We're so sorry for all the things we did to you. And Joseph looked and said unto them, fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. You see, Joseph, because he was serving God, and he took God with him from a very young age in his life, by the time that he was 30, he's now the ruler over all of Egypt. Joseph was so prosperous in his life, and it wasn't because of anything Joseph did or because Joseph was a good guy, but it was because Joseph took God with him. You have this same decision today. You can choose this day to do what you want to do and forsake God and live how you want to live, give in to the temptations, give in to all the sins. You can choose to do that. But you might be in the place of Joseph's brothers, if you do, in a place holding on to guilts, holding on to regrets, a place where God was never able to do anything in your life. They had to come to Egypt because they were starving because they weren't led by God. But see, Joseph, because Joseph was such a young boy and chose to serve the Lord at such a young age. Joseph was so prosperous that by the time he was 30, he was second in command over all of Egypt. You see, when you can give yourself over to God, even at such a young age, God can do so much more through you. And so I know these times in your teenage years, things are hard. Decisions are tough. You feel like maybe you've got some time. Maybe you don't have to do this right now. Or maybe you feel like it's too hard to serve God. But if you just stop and think about Joseph, think about all the times that he was sold into slavery and the time he was put into prison and all these hard places that he was in. But yet, because the Lord was with him, how prosperous God made his life. If you will choose this day to serve the Lord, this day, not wait till tomorrow. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. Jesus could be coming tomorrow for us. We could be in a car accident. There's so many things that could happen. We're not promised that. But if you will serve the Lord today and make those decisions now, think of all the things that God can do with you in your life. Think of all the ways you can prosper. So I leave you with this. Will things be easy? No. Are things easy for me because I'm in my 30s? No, I promise. No matter what, when you are serving the Lord, your flesh will get in the way and you're going to desire things that you shouldn't. But the more that we serve God and we put ourselves behind and we don't serve us, but we really serve God, we can be so much prosperous in our life. And I want to share that with you all because I want the best for you. I want you to be prosperous in your life. I want to see you all when you're my age, being so much farther than what I could ever be. Because I waited so much longer in my life to start really serving the Lord, that it's going to take me a lot longer. And I don't know that I'm going to have that time. But see, you can start serving Him now. And all the great things that God can do with you in your life now. So I leave you with this. Serve Him. Even in the hard times, choose Him. And God will choose you, and He will make you prosperous in all that you do. I love you, and I pray that you truly have a blessed day.